people tend to get a little on edge when it comes to the subject of remakes. Because we haven't had the best track record in the world. And let me tell you, if you think that movie remakes are usually bad, let's talk about television remakes for a second. Because with television remakes, it's even more difficult. Because not only do you still have to rebuild the mythos from the bottom up, but you have to be able to remake that mythos and make it work for 13 episodes, or sometimes up to 100 episodes or more, depending on the length of your show. And there are plenty of examples of terrible television remakes out there. But today we're actually going to be talking about one of the good ones. In fact, it may be one of the best. A remake that managed to take one of the most iconic Saturday morning cartoon shows of the 80s, if not of all time, and somehow come up with a show that not only is loyal to the source material, is on par with the original, but in many ways may actually surpass it with flying colors. What show am I speaking of, ladies and gentlemen? Well, you're going to have to tune in to find out. By the power of Grayskull, this is Saturday Morning Fever.
From now on, like your parents were, you are the secret force of hope.
They're moving real fast, they're the only one who can get there on time. They're never too far behind, they're always fighting crime. Undercover, facing adventure in the danger zone. Pretty soon they'll be off on a mission. Come and watch them go. Sun doesn't shine. What's the highest and show? Sun doesn't shine. One is out on the road. Sun doesn't shine. To sit back and watch them go.
He-Man and the Masters of the Universe! A miraculous time capsule of a show that manages to both be timeless and dated at the same time, if that's possible. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The 1980s were debatably the true golden age of the Saturday morning cartoon show genre, although the actual ratio of, quality to quantity is something we're still probably debating a little bit to this day. Due to deregulation by President Ronald Reagan and the FCC, any channel you would flip to on a Saturday morning would be filled to the brim with commercials for all sorts of random toy lines for kids, and advertisements for the Saturday morning cartoon shows that were made to sell the crap out of them. Many people today are familiar with the idea of having a very successful cartoon show, and sure, you're gonna then, after you see that it's a successful thing that people want to buy lots of toys and lunchboxes and stuff from, that you go ahead and make that stuff, and sure, it'll sell like hotcakes and make up for the costs of the show. Back in the 80s, however, due to the deregulation, it was not an uncommon practice at all for you to take an existing toy line, buy the rights to it, and write an entire television show based off of whatever random crap was in that toy line, and no one would be the wiser. Now, with the absolute glutton of shows that existed in the 1980s, to even be noticed or remembered as a Saturday morning cartoon show was no small feat, let alone to be like one of the top 3 in the entire decade. Up there with the likes of Ninja Turtles or Thundercats and so on. But the thing is I'm curious how many people today are actually familiar with He-Man based off the fact that he was a television show character, rather than a lot of the more, let's just call them viral-focused ways that He-Man is remembered today. Like, I know that kids and teenagers today might know that He-Man is a show that existed, but I'm guessing that most of them would be familiar with the character today more either as a recurring character on Robot Chicken, or as... well, that. The question of whether or not the old school He-Man show holds up is a very complicated one. What I'll say in the matter is the pop culture influence and the rabid old school fan base this show still holds to this day is undeniable. And although there is a lot of stuff that this show got right, whether it be its 80s cheesiness or its memorable characters, it's hard not to argue that after 20 years of animation, that there isn't room for improvement on a show even as popular and well-known and loved as this one. So, while I think that the old school He-Man show is a spectacular show in its own right, and I completely understand why it has so many loyal fans after all these years, I simply ask that you look into the new show with an open mind. So for those of you guys who need a refresher, the plot of both shows is basically the same. In the magical land of Eternia, Prince Adam is given an Excalibur-like sword that transforms him into the mighty He-Man. Accompanied by his battle cat, Cringer, and his Masters of the Universe, he must defend Eternia from the evil Skeletor! A supervillain so incredibly 80s, it literally transcends any stupid joke I could possibly write. So instead, enjoy.
I should have known.
Your mistake will cost you dearly, old enemy. I'm about to rid Eternia of your hated presence forever. You'll feel nothing, He-Man, but you will no longer be a problem to me. By the powers of darkness, evil, and fear, I command He-Man's memory to now disappear. Doorway, now prove that Skeletor is clever. Sweep He-Man inside you and hold him forever!
So immediately you're probably going to notice that animation is one of the major ways that the new show improved on its predecessor. I mean, Filmation is known for a lot of different things, but top-notch animation is certainly not one of them. While looking back at the old show, things tend to be very smudgy and undefined, while in the reboot we have clean lines, flowing action, and dynamic lighting that fits the overall more serious tone of the new show. Kind of hard to give too much crap to the old show for its animation quality, due to the just exorbitant amount of episodes they had to make in pretty much the same amount of time. Like, animation schedules and keeping things on point are difficult today, but back then, comparing the two shows, they basically had to make over 3 times as many episodes with even less time than the new show had. On the note of character design, the old show did have very memorable characters, but at the same point, it was not even trying to hide the fact that they were basically a toy line first and a television show second. Every character was, this is this person, and they have this epic name that tells you what the thing they do is, and they do this thing. And so many of them were really cool, like Manny Faces, who had many faces with completely separate personalities, while other of them were not so cool, like Metal Neck, who has a really long metal neck. The new show does something actually really fascinating with its character design, is it actually comes up with ways to keep the ridiculous, out-of-control, cheesy 80s characters from the original show and update them in a way that matches the new tone and the more serious nature of the new show, but also stays very true to the characters themselves. Mostly you see this in the form of the villainous henchmen that are bumbling annoyances to Skeletor. But at the same point, they even keep a character like Orko, a character known by the original He-Man fans as probably like the Jar Jar Binks of the original show, and actually gave him even more screen time than he had in the original show. They even took the character like Metal Neck and gave him an episode dealing with the existential crisis of being Metal Neck. But by far the best example of this is Skeletor. I mean, people would have been raging in the streets if they actually took Skeletor and removed his ridiculous, high-pitched Skeletor voice. But somehow, they came up with a way to not only let him keep the voice, but they let him keep it in a way that makes him seem even more evil than Lord Zed, Mumra, and Shredder combined. While in the case of Skeletor, staying loyal to your source material while updating subtly, I think was the correct direction. In terms of Prince Adam, the fact that they took a major change to the character, I think was actually a step definitely in the right direction. Because you see, in the new show, Prince Adam is a young, skinny, and inexperienced teenager who physically transforms into the mighty hero he's always wanted to be. In the old show, Prince Adam is, well, he's He-Man with more pink. I mean, not really the best disguise there. I don't even think I'm being unreasonable either, because, I mean, I love the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You know, absolutely love the show. But let's be real, those trench coats aren't fooling anybody. It may seem like I'm being really hard on the old show, and I don't want that to come off that way, because I think that if you look at the 80s show for what it is, it's just this amazing time capsule of the way that a different generation made Saturday morning cartoon shows, and enjoy the out of control, wacky, cheesy 80s fashion of it. I think there's a lot you can really glean from the old show, and it still has a very large fan base to this day, either loving the show ironically or otherwise. At the end of the day, there's no reason you have to pick sides, and you can like both shows for completely different reasons. And the best part about it is that both shows are on Netflix, so I think they're definitely both worth a watch.